You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hello everyone, good to be back. This is Lance with Monster 911. It's been about a week here. A lot of things going on. Of course, not only nationally, internationally, but I just got back from Oklahoma's big Bigfoot conference down in Howdy, Oklahoma, which is southeast Oklahoma. And that area is very familiar with me. I stayed with a buddy down there, and we had a great time. There was quite a few people on Saturday that came down, not so much on Friday, but everybody gets off. Usually they don't work on Saturdays. But I have a buddy that lives down there, and he said that last year was a bit busier, and I think the economy, fuel prices, and everything kind of limits people on their travel. But I was very humbled and honored that I got asked to speak for next year. So I'll be a speaker for 2023 at the Howdy Bigfoot Conference. So I want to give a presentation. I'm going to work up about 2 or 3 of them, at least 2, that presentations that's never been done before. I'll just say that. So if you get a chance, come say hi. And speaking of that, they have story time, kind of campfire story time on Friday and Saturday nights. And I was at both with my buddy, and it's kind of like a campfire out under the stars. There was a burn ban, so some people got creative, but it looked like a campfire. But it was highly fascinating. This year had some really good encounter stories. Most of these are first-person accounts. I got up both nights, Friday and Saturday, and told of some accounts that happened to many of the guests. And then I told my brother Lane's back some years ago that happened west of where we grew up, of Watonga, Oklahoma. So had a great time. Many of you that listened to the show came up and said hi to me, wanted me to sign some programs. I'm very humble. I appreciate that. And if I didn't get a chance to adequately say hi and thank you, my apologies. There was a lot of people that it was kind of dark, and I was trying to say hi, and everybody was trying to, and this was Saturday night and Friday, so my apologies, and thank you so much. I'm very humbled that you listened to the show, and you've been following, many of the people that came had been following us since Cryptid Brothers Investigations of Oklahoma back in 2017. So we've been doing this a while. And many of you follow it, of course, right now, Monster 911. And again, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate that. But had a great time. Just heard lots of accounts down there in McCurtain County and all over Oklahoma and outside of Oklahoma. There was a lot of new people there that had never had an encounter. So this was all new to them, and they just kind of took it in and absorbed it. But anyway, had a great time and thoroughly enjoyed talking to a lot of the vendors. There were some people that I met that had some things in common. One vendor, and I met Kim and Keith, and it was Keith Crabtree. He's the nephew of Smokey Crabtree. Now, Smokey and I, if that name sounds familiar, many of you that have watched The Legend of Boggy Creek, it's a docudrama. And in there, the narration, or part of the narration, was supposed to be that of Smokey Crabtree's life from a child growing up as an adult and living in the community. And I had an opportunity to talk with Smokey at great length for at least 2 hours or so, way back in Tyler, Texas. There was a Bigfoot conference down there back, 19 years ago, somewhere in there. And went down there. I didn't know who he was. He was selling some books. And if you really want to know, if you want an interesting read, you really want to know what truly happened down in Falk, Arkansas, you need to get Smokey Crabtree's book. He signed it. We had a great time. Unfortunately, he passed away. What a good man. What a great conversationalist. Anyway, I had the privilege to meet Keith and Kim. Kim, you were awesome. Thank you so much for your kindness. And we had a good time chatting about Smokey. So met them, and I met some others from Tulsa area. And so it was nice to meet all of you as well. So let's get on to the show. I looked on the messages on the website, and I'm always, since I'm live in Oklahoma, was raised in Oklahoma, I'm always highly fascinated with anybody seeing anything in Oklahoma, but also the bordering states, Kansas, Texas, Arkansas, everything. So, especially this Dogman creature, which that's kind of what we pursue a little bit more. And
Cool.
that's kind of our area that we gravitate to, because a lot of people, it kind of freaks them out over this creature. And
Right.
being and Wiley Dave that's with, he speaks coyote, he speaks predator. So that's kind of what we go after, and we've made some special calls that we try to attract these in, mainly not to hunt them.
Uh-huh.
Is, if they get kind of weird on us, we don't have a problem shooting, but we primarily want to get on video, clear video. It's just it's it's a luck game, really, of trying to be at the right place at the right time with the right lighting and the camera
Yeah.
rolling. And that's
Yeah.
that's it sounds easy, but it's really hard.
No, it's tough. If I had a GoPro on my head and all these times it happened, but it always happens when you least expect it, you know.
Bingo, you hit it right on the head. It happens when you least expect it. And that's the big argument people have. They go, well, how come you didn't get a picture? Well, I'm not a photojournalist. I can't have a camera rolling all the time.
Right.
And most of us, when you see this creature, you're not thinking, I got to get a picture. You're thinking, what the hell am I looking at?
Oh, I was slapping myself, making sure I wasn't dreaming, and
Yeah, and
Exactly.
is that your dad?
that's my Uncle Keith. Yes, sir. He's here with us.
How you
Well,
doing, Lance?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you so much for being there, and I look
Well,
forward into.
I'm proud to talk to you.
Yes, sir. Well, here's the way I kind of do it. If you've heard some shows, I'm an informal kind of guy. Um, if you don't mind, what I'll do is I typically don't give names or occupations, or now you can speak freely with me, but I we scrub all that out.
All
And
right.
that way, if you say something by accident, a property boundary or something, I go through there and I wipe away property, quarter mile here, half mile here, turn at the oak tree. I wipe all that out. And that
Right.
way, I just, believe it or not, people do follow these shows really close. And I didn't know this until early some years ago, and people were on people's property without permission.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can see that could be a mess right there.
Yeah, and there's other reasons why I just don't want property boundaries and all that. So, but anyway, I appreciate you guys kind of sharing with me, because every time someone reveals what happened or what they saw, we learn a little bit more, because no one in my mind, Dave, even though Dave is kind of a predator expert, really, we're all still learning. We're all students. And that's the kind of the way we look at ourselves as we're students. We're still learning. We're in pursuit. So you could say
Yeah.
so we learn with everything, and every situation's a little bit different. So that's why we're highly fascinated when someone sees these creatures. So um,
Right.
is that okay with you guys? And you guys can chime in together. There's no whatever you feel. Again, I'm informal. You can talk over each other or whatever, and then I'll just try to keep my mouth shut and let you guys kind of tell, if there's multiple sightings. You can start with the earliest, or you can start anywhere in the middle, or start at the end. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, I tried to put them in chronological order as best I could. I've had so many different things. I mean, these sightings I have, they're not like some of these. Like I've watched some of the videos, or some of these are like lasting, for I don't know, like 10 maybe to 15 minutes or longer. And mine are pretty brief, but I remember them pretty vividly. My name is Sean, which 49 years old, and all of the sightings that I have are pretty much strictly just Dogman, which I'm kind of surprised, because I figured if I was to see any type of cryptid in my life, as much as people talk about Bigfoot, that I'd see something like that first, and then it didn't work out like that. But this was in probably around 1997 when I started having the first encounter. Um, I like to spend a lot of time outside, fishing, hunting, anything to do, with outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I've always enjoyed myself like that. I get cabin fever real easy. As far as trade, I'm a mechanic and heavy equipment operator by trade. I've also spent some time in the oil field with that. Worked for Caterpillar and places like that as well. Uh, just kind of different places, anything to do with heavy equipment. And so that's kind of my forte.
Okay.
So anyway, as far as like the time that these things happen, I don't have an exact like day, but I can tell you like the year, and I can also tell you that when it happened, it was somewhere around the Thanksgiving holidays.
Okay.
So starting in Oklahoma in 1997, like I said, around the Thanksgiving holidays, my grandparents own 85 acres of land, and the house kind of sits up towards the center of the property. And so it kind of, to get there, you also go down an old blacktop road. I'm going to say probably about 3 miles or so in there off the main highway.
Okay.
And so it really is, back in the thick of the country there. And, we've always enjoyed going there, and they've got, a big fishing pond and stuff. We go out there and fish and all that kind of thing. And plus, my papa, he also raised cows and stuff out there as well. And so usually the family would get together, and we'd always kind of center up, or papa and grandma's place, and everybody get together and enjoy the holidays and stuff. So anyway, we were all there, and most of everybody was in the kitchen, eating and talking. And being that we lived out in the country, not trying to be graphic or nothing, but sometimes, as men, we like to handle our business outside, and
right.
That's one of them situations. And so I'm just more comfortable like that with the cool, fresh air,
I get you.
And so I stepped outside, and as soon as I stepped outside, the first thing I noticed was, being that the pond and everything is approximately maybe, I'll give or take, maybe, I'm going to say maybe 100 foot from the house. So it's pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
And so the bullfrogs and all these things are always, singing, and the crickets chirping. I mean, it's kind of loud at night, there. And I mean, I've had them things sing to sleep many a night with the window open and just a box fan, sitting up there close to the window, pulling in the night air.
Right. That's perfect.
And, so anyway, as I was out there, just doing my thing, and all of a sudden, I just got this feeling like I was being watched. But it was a different feeling of being watched. It was like
everything got quiet.
Yeah, well, everything was quiet when I stepped off, but it's like it was a different feeling though. It's like I felt like I was being watched, but like I felt like I was kind of like being like a like I felt like prey. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a creepy feeling, And I've never had that before like that. Like I've seen, I've heard people on the show here talk about, panthers and stuff. Well, we got panthers all around here too. I've seen 2 of them, and I've had one actually chase me inside the dog pen, and then my dog saved me,
Oh, wow.
So I mean, I've been around that stuff, but operating heavy equipment, you see a lot of stuff like that, especially in the oil field, because I mean, you may be digging stuff out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, like I said, you have to forgive me. I kind of go chasing rabbits sometimes or anything shiny. So
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. So you definitely know what it's like being chased by a predator.
Oh yes.
And you're just saying it's a different feeling than what this felt like for sure.
Yes, this was something totally different. Like it's a different kind of fear. It's like
Flight or fight.
Yeah, but in a way, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I knew I was being watched, but at the same time, it was like I knew whatever was watching me was intelligent. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And so it's like that kind of a difference. There's a difference in being scared, like if you got a cougar or something like that, amongst your presence. And, but it's different when these things are in the area because it's a whole different kind of fear because you know that not only are they, built to kill and to hunt as well as like another predator, but actually more so, but they're highly intelligent, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is I could feel like something was contemplating,
That's interesting. That's
and
very
so,
interesting.
that was that whole thing there. And so, and I'm also a praying man myself, I mean,
Fantastic.
what I'm saying is so
Mm-hmm.
as I was doing this thing and with me, once I get started, I don't want to stop, but I've got this fear thing going. And so I just kind of start praying under my breath. I'm just saying, Lord Jesus, I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's at, but I'm just praying for my own safety. I'm like, Lord, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt like not an audible voice, but the Lord speaking to him in my heart, like in my consciousness. And I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like he was saying, okay, I'm going to tell you where he's at. He's behind the wood pile. And whenever you get done, I want you to point at the wood pile. And he said, this is very important. He said, with authority. And it's like he told me twice, with authority, rebuke it in my name, like that. I said, this is my first encounter. So this is all brand new to me. So I'm like, man, is this really what's going on? And
Hmm.
so I get done, zip everything up. And I kind of gather myself because the night air is cool and I could feel my breath is real shaky. Every breath I took, it was just real kind of heavy and shaky,
Yes.
And so I'm like, oh, I got to calm down if I'm going to do this right,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of calm myself down and I'm thinking, okay, can I do this? I'm like, all right, I can do this. And so I located the wood pile and it was approximately, uh, how far away was that wood pile out there? The wood pile by the fence going towards the barn, about maybe 50 to 75 foot or so. So anyway, I looked out there and I pointed my finger and then I just yelled out. I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you. I mean, just like that, as loud as I could.
Wow.
And as soon as I did that, this thing stood up and I couldn't really see him well because it was so dark out there and the light that they had out there really didn't shine behind that wood pile. So
Hmm.
he picked a real good hiding spot.
Okay.
But when he stood up, and I cannot tell you, it was just some type of hellacious growl, but it was like it was mixed though. And this is the thing that fascinated me was I was like, man, check this out. This thing knows who Jesus is, because when he growled, it was like a ticked off growl, but it was also like a scared, like it mixed in it. It was kind of hard to explain.
Kind of like,
But
dang it, you shouldn't have done that, or.
yeah, something like that. It's like it's almost like he was, I don't want to say he was intimidated, but it was just, you could just tell he knew what that meant, and I
Hmm.
think it's fascinating because I'm like, how many other animals know who he is like that, and you say the name and they recognize the name like that, it just fascinated me because when I first did it, I was like, I was halfway not expecting anything, just thinking maybe I was, you know making all this up in my own head or something.
Right.
But soon as that thing growled and made that yell like it did, and then took off through the woods breaking stuff, I could hear the way this thing was running through the woods. Like the difference between like when a dead limb is popping and it's something that's real good and strong and still alive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difference in the snap and the pop that it makes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And in the night air, it was echoing. I'm like, man, he just smashed through some good hard red oak. You could hear it. And you just knew that what he went through was something solid. And just the way it was popping and snapping all through there. And I've heard people say this where it sounds like a bulldozer without the engine, you know?
Right. That's
And
exactly what they say.
yeah, it's kind of exactly what he was. But when he first jumped up, when I said the name of Jesus, I rebuke you, he jumped up and just kind of, and it was like scary, but at the same time, it was like, how can I explain this? It was like like I was scared, but at the same time I was kind of excited too. It was like, wow, these things are real, because like I said, this is my very first one.
Yeah, so this was like a grunt, yell, uh, I mean, somewhere growl, grunt.
Yeah, yeah, and exactly, kind of like what you said. Don't do that. I don't like that, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Like now you've
And,
done it. I got to
yeah,
leave now.
it's like you're gonna get it now. I don't like that, but I'm leaving, but I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I didn't know really what to expect. But after that happened, I was so shaken up on the inside. And then just to think about, man, I was trying to think what this thing sounded like. And it's like the best thing I could come up with is I can only come with one animal, but it wasn't just that. It was mixed with something else, but I can't place anything else that makes sense with it. But it's like it had the decibel of a lion, like that reverberation was so deep, and
Hmm.
and it's like the decibel level was so loud. It's like no human could have done that.
Sure. Sure.
It was just so loud. It was just, my goodness, it was loud. And so it's like all I can say is it sounded kind of like a lion, but then it was something else kind of mixed in it. But I cannot tell you anything else that would explain it.
Well, if you get right down to it, the features is that what else would logically be native in the woods that would stand up, that could
Yeah,
stand up? Man, okay, man could. A bear could, but usually bears, their habits and characteristics, they usually, when you yell at it, it doesn't stand up. They stand up out of curiosity, or
uh,
if they're close, they'll do it out of intimidation. But they don't run away like that, busting the limbs like that. They can, but it ran on two legs away.
it did run off on two legs. It did, and that's the point. It's like being that I didn't really get a good look at this one. The only reason I'm saying that one probably more than likely was a dog man was because somewhere in that neighborhood of the time zone there is when my uncle actually laid eyes on the dog man himself,
Yeah.
because he saw him before I did actually, as far as laying eyes on the thing, and
Oh,
he did it. And so when he said that's what it was, I was like, well, I mean, I guess it's a possibility it could still been a Sasquatch and that was coming along too, but I'm thinking it's probably one of the same, and that's why I'm saying it's probably the dog man. And then on top of that, I did actually later on, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm trying to keep it in order, but uh, at that point I didn't see anything. This is more of a hearing thing, and then that feeling thing where you just know something's watching you, but it's not the same thing as a regular animal. This is something much more intelligent, dynamic, maybe is a word. I don't know, but
well, so at
you
this
know,
point, you're looking into just darkness,
yes,
and you just knew that there was a wood pile out there, not too far away. And the way it
right.
sounded, that's kind of where you directed it to, and that's what you said the Lord had directed you right there.
Yeah, yes, because see, before this, like when I first stepped outside, I'm just thinking about, handling my business. That's all that's on my mind right now because we're in there doing hot chocolate and this and that,
Right,
know what I mean?
right, exactly.
And so, it's like I'm just thinking about getting out there. And so, but I did notice after I got out there, it's like, man, why is it so quiet out here? I don't hear the frogs, I don't hear the crickets, I don't hear nothing, not even any of those. Sometimes you hear a bird or two. It's like I didn't hear nothing, you know?
You noticed that right off the bat. I mean, that was one of the things you noticed, how quiet it was.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it was the feeling I had first, and then I started praying, and then when I began to pray, then the Lord directed me behind the wood pile because I said I don't know where it is or where or what it is. Lord protect me. Then He directed me. He said behind the wood pile is where it's at, and then point
Mm.
at it. And He said with authority. He said now don't do this quietly. With authority, He said rebuke it in my name. And then after that, when the sucker stood up and growled, see, I didn't even hear anything until that point.
Oh, okay. This was an overwhelming, weird, different feeling
Yeah,
that was, you felt it, and
yeah,
it was something then that the Lord directed you. You got to say this, and you got to mean it.
yes,
And then that's when that was the first. And then when you directed it behind that wood pile, it was still 50, 75 feet away. That's when, now, Did you see any when it stood up? How do you know it stood up? Was it could you hear it stand up? If you couldn't,
Well, the light where it was at was behind the bush. It didn't shine out there. The reason I know it stood up on 2 feet
yes.
is because whenever it stood up, the reason I know he was on 2 feet because as soon as it stood up and gave that hellacious growl, he was running off at the same time. And when he ran off, I could hear the 2 feet instead of like the 4 foot.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
then at the same time, I know he stood up is because the next morning, but I told my uncle about this, and he was like, "Well, hey, let's not go out there because it's nighttime, and this just happened because he may be out there waiting for us somewhere, you know."
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, "Let's wait." And then in the morning, I think was it Papa's old German Schnauzer or what was that? It was some top-powered rifle that he had.
Yeah.
What was that? Is that what that was? The German Schnauzer. And so he got it, and we went out there that next morning to check things out. And so we went out behind there, and we could see where something crashed through, like you know what a bodark tree is.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, well, whatever this was crashed through. I mean, well, I'm talking about like 3-inch bodarks, you know, long ones, and just crashed through a whole slew of them, and took some of them out. But about somewhere around 8 to 9 foot up in the air, these off the red oak up there, they were snapped off, and I'm talking about limbs that were at least, I'm gonna say probably around, I don't know, somewhere probably between 8 and 9 inches thick, you know.
Red oak.
And I up, and they had some weight on them, man. They were not dead. They were solid limbs, and they were snapped off. And I mean, when he left, you could hear him just snapping them. I mean, he just kept snapping them as he kept running through the woods. And actually, I'm thinking probably like you are. Why didn't he get on all fours and kind of navigate around them? You know.
Well,
But
that's a good point because, well, let me just back up here a little bit. For folks that don't know, red oak is like concrete as far as the trees. It is solid, it's dense, it makes a great wood to burn because it lasts a long time and it burns hot. But red oak is just one of the most solid woods to no man can break something that diameter. There's no way. There's no way. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, bodark is what they make a lot of knife handles of, axe handles and bows. And so it's a hardwood as well, and the older it gets, the harder it gets. And
Yes.
but red oak, oh my gosh. What was the diameter again you said?
Somewhere between 8 and 9 inches. I mean, you know, just by looking at it, I'm gonna say somewhere in that area, and then probably, I don't know, they were probably somewhere around, probably about 10 foot long or so. You know, I mean, pretty good sized limbs.
Man.
I mean, you know, it would take a lot for somebody to be able to, you know, if you had a pole saw or something, you could go up there and chop them, you know. But man, I mean, as far as just reach up there and break them one,
No.
I mean, you're not just going to reach up there and do that. You'll do pull-ups off of one before you can break it, you know.
Well, you won't have any leverage. The average size of man won't have any leverage to do that, even if it was at ground level.
Right, right.
I mean, so they were how high again that you saw? Roughly?
Well, roughly to me, they're like somewhere between 8 and 9 foot up in the air, you know, somewhere in
Wow.
that vicinity. And so that's why I was like, well, whatever this was surely had stood up. And because it sounded like 2 feet when he took off. And I mean, when he left, though, the thing is he must have had a heck of a stride because, man, it was like he starts off real loud and heavy. Like if you heard like the weight, like a horse, like if you got a heavy horse and he puts his foot down, you can hear that sound it makes because of the sheer weight, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can hear that weight, but it's like it disappeared and fainted quickly. But yet, as it fainted, you could still hear the popping and stuff of him breaking limbs as he's still hauling butt, you know, through the woods.
He's probably just barely touching the ground because when Wiley saw his in western Oklahoma, we saw some, but they weren't running. They walked away. Wiley saw his coming running in, and he saw it run away on 2 legs. And where a man has a stride, you know, the legs are just moving back and forth very fast. This one, as it caught its speed fast, it was rapid in its speed, it was bounding. It was like a hurdler. And he said it was about 50-foot strides. I mean, it was bounding about every 50 feet.
Yes,
And
that makes sense to me right there because that's what it sounded like. This thing started off loud and heavy, and just within a matter of seconds, man, he finally got where you couldn't hear nothing but the wood popping way back on the other side of the acreage. As the crow flies, my aunt and uncle uh, lived, diagonal on the other side of the property where their property's connected, and he just ran straight through, all that. And like I said, and that bow dart was so thick, I just don't know. There's no way anybody in a monkey suit or anything could have done that.
No, it's awkward. I mean, when we get in suits, you can tell, first of all, but trying to navigate without a light at night with a suit,
Oh no,
there's no
yeah,
way. There's no way you can go through those boat arc or red oak. There's
no,
just no way. You'll get hung up, get an eye poked.
yeah,
You're going to have a problem as a human.
absolutely, absolutely,
So I'm in concurrent with you that it wasn't a person and wasn't a bear. And
no,
outside of that, it had to be, you know, either a Squatch or the Dogman. But
yes.
if someone else in your family saw the Dogman, the likelihood of being a Dogman also is
I
pretty.
started up real close.
Yeah, he saw it pretty close, and
Oh, he did.
according,
Oh, okay.
according to him, how tall do you think it'd have been if he stood up to you?
At least 9 foot.
See, so that makes sense with where the limbs were that were broken off, and so that's why I went with Dogman on that one. But now,
Between 9 and 10 foot.
okay,
It was huge.
so he's saying between 9 and 10 foot that it was huge, but
Wow. Wow. So that happened about what time of the evening?
It was a werewolf.
okay, at the time of the evening, I'm gonna say this happened roughly, probably somewhere close to around 10 o'clock, because it was pretty dark out, and of course, in the wintertime it gets dark early, so it was sure enough dark out there.
Okay.
I'm gonna say it's probably somewhere close to 10 o'clock.
Okay. And what did it's your uncle, right? That's back there in the
Yeah.
background. What did he say just now about a werewolf?
Uh, it, I don't know what you call it. To me, it was a werewolf. I mean, the picture, I've got a methodological color book. A friend of mine, look at this, and the thing in the color book somebody saw that thing and put him in the color book.
Oh, wow.
But
Wow.
I was taking my nephew to town to get some liquor. He wasn't quite 21, and I wanted to drink a little bit myself, so we went to go get a bottle of liquor.
Okay.
But anyway, right before we got to the end of the driveway, it come through or over, I'm not for sure, a 5-strand barbed wire fence so fast it was just a blur. And then when it got to the edge of the driveway in front of like 4 foot, 5 foot in front of the car hood
Oh, wow.
across the driveway, and it took a stride so slow, it's almost impossible for anything to go that slow across the driveway. Had its head looking back at us, so tongue hanging down about his shoulder, about 8 inches out of his mouth, saliva dripping off of it. He was kind of a silver color. His hair was glowing silver in the moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
We were over the barbed wire fence on the other side, and it looked like ocean waves. You know how the water parts in a speedboat? That's the way
Yes.
the grass was doing.
Oh, really?
And he-
And it was across the 10-acre field in a second. And it was like the grass was parting like waves in a motorboat.
So
What's that?
it walked so slow in front of you that it just took its sweet time.
Oh, it took a stride across the driveway, and it was not just taking a sweet time. It's like it went in slow motion. Somehow, like there's no way physically possible for it to go that slow in front of you, but it did.
yeah, and some of that could be adrenaline too.
And there's no way it could have went that fast, but it did.
Well, it's interesting because typically, and you guys know this being out in the country with coyotes and wolves and especially the panther, typically predators do what around humans? They'll either evade, most of them. They don't want to be
Yeah.
around a human, most of them, but you get those instances where they will come at you, like in your instance, Sean. So they don't typically, or there's no intent about something. They're either going to attack you, they're reactive. They're either going to attack you or immediately evade from you fast. So
Yes.
for this creature to almost intentionally, that's what it did, intentionally slow down, look at you. It's like that's an intelligent movement.
Oh,
That's an intelligent characteristic. Like,
right at us when it come across the. I mean, it was like 3 foot, 5 foot at the most in front of the car hood, in bright headlights.
Yeah, I think from when he was telling me about it, he said, because see, when you're going down the driveway, like I said, my papa, he raised, cows out there. I forgot what you call them, but the red and white ones. And, but that driveway, like I said, the property where the house is located kind of the center. So the driveway is real long before it gets out down there to the blacktop,
okay.
And so on both sides of the driveway, within, I don't know, 5 or 6 foot is the barbed wire fence for the pasture, So you're going down through the middle of the pasture, and on both sides, the barbed wire fence.
Okay.
And I remember he said something like, he said that thing looked like, from he could tell, was on all fours at first, and then once he got over the fence, he jumped up on two, and then in slow motion ran in front of the truck on 2 feet.
It come through the fence or over the fence so fast, it was just a blur.
And then when he got on the other side of the barbed wire fence, he said it looked like he went back to all fours again, back into a full gallop.
Well, that's almost a sign when you stand up like that. It's almost very similar, and I'm just going to use this as an analogy. It may not be a great analogy, but it's almost like a human getting ready to puff his chest out to say, you don't want to mess with me. I'm a big, bad man, and you don't want to mess with me. And he stood up, an act of...
Was on 2 legs going across the driveway.
Now, when it
looking straight at us,
looking straight at you,
yeah.
Could you see the eyes that it was looking straight at you?
Yes, I see everything.
Because you've got your hair.
He was kind of silver colored because his hair was glistening in the moonlight. Eyes were like a burnt orange or burnt amber.
Tell me about the muzzle and the ears and everything.
Muzzle and ears was like a real long. The ears are real long.
About how many inches long do you think?
The snout was like 14, it was huge, like 14, 15 inches long.
Yeah.
14,
when we
15.
come back after getting the liquor bottle, I passed the driveway, and he jumped from the other side, the left side of the highway, and we're driving on the right, over into the next pasture. He cleared the road, the bar ditch, and the fence, then turned around and sat down on all fours on his haunches like a dog.
Oh, okay. So I back up so I can understand here. My apologies here. So was this a separate encounter when you came back home?
Yeah, separate from the Sean's.
Okay. So when you saw this Dogman that took its time in front of you and ran off, and the grass was separating, the pasture was separating. So what you just got through telling me, and on one that crossed the road, was that a different occasion?
No. What they did was they was gonna go get some liquor, and this is after they come back from getting the liquor.
Oh, okay.
I passed my driveway, and I slowed down. I was going to turn around at the next. It's a double wide trailer on the left side. I was going to turn around that driveway and go back to my driveway. Well, as soon as I slowed down, it jumped in front of me again. It cleared from the edge of the highway, clear over the highway, the bar ditch, and another barbed wire fence into the pasture beside our property, and turned around and sat down on his haunches and looked at it. Looked like a cow standing out there or sitting out there. Wow. It was huge.
Wow. That's an interesting posture.
Pointed ears, long pointed snout. It was a werewolf. It
Well,
looked like a wolf.
That's what a lot of people call them is werewolves, and
It was a werewolf.
that's I've had more than one person talk about that. Well, I had a
Nothing I could do. It was a werewolf.
a buddy of mine. They had two of them cross the dirt road going up to their house, and it's not too far from where I live here. And they were so big, the wife caught movement up ahead on their driveway. The husband was driving, but he was looking off to the side. He wasn't looking up his driveway. And where there were two of them together that were gray or silver, and they crossed in. They crossed in front, and she said, "Did you see that?" And she said they were so big, she thought it was a cow. But she said cows don't move that fast, and they don't have bushy tails. She said that the hindquarters were so pronounced. It's almost like you could. The butt was huge. Um, so it was when they caught up to the driveway, the blackjack was still moving, and blackjack, was all gnarly and tough and hard.
Yeah.
It was still vibrating for them, just boom, busting through that blackjack, and there was limbs broken. But that's interesting how it just set down, because that's almost an act of you don't scare me.
Oh, it didn't. I mean, as soon as it jumped from the left side of the highway clear across the blacktop, a 2-lane blacktop highway, the bar ditch, and the fence that's 4 foot from the bar ditch, clear over the top of the barbed wire. As soon as it jumped over, it just turned around and sat down on its haunches and was looking at us.
And how close was this to your house?
Oh, just 200 feet down the road from our driveway.
Oh my. And when did this occur?
98, 99, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Wow. And
Between 99, I'm not exactly quite for sure, but yeah.
do you know what time of the year it was? Was it summer, fall, winter?
It was fall because you could see your breath.
Okay. Have you seen anything after that 98 or 99 encounter?
No, I haven't, but I haven't been around the property either.
Okay. What did you think when you saw that? I mean, had you heard of anything like that prior to seeing this creature?
No, I hadn't. Never heard of it, never seen. Well, I've heard of it, but I've never seen one or anybody that had.
No stories in the area or when you were a kid growing up? Nothing like that?
No.
Wow.
No, not me either.
There were stories of like Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when this happened, I'm sure you know some neighbors in the area. Did any of your neighbors say they saw anything? I mean, I know people, when they see something like this, you want to kind of...
I didn't really even want to tell nobody but family, because who's going to believe you?
Well, that's true. I mean, people
Right.
keep this stuff pretty tight and close to them because they don't want to, people think they're nuts or crazy. So I know sometimes people don't talk about it, but I'm just curious.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, you had more stories after that.
Me? Yeah. Oh, yeah. My goodness.
Yeah. Sean's had more encounters after that. I never did, but I moved away from there too.
Oh, okay. You moved away. Who lives in that property now?
Nobody.
Oh, okay. Wow.
The house is empty, and I plan on moving back. I never did have a fear, like a fear of my life.
Right.
For whatever reason, I don't know. I felt like it didn't mean to hurt us, or it could have.
Well,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, with the speed that these creatures have and the size.
When it before it appeared in front of us, it came through the barbed wire or over the barbed wire. I'm not sure which, but it was a blur. Then just stopped and in slow motion stepped across in front of us into the headlights, and it was a good 9 foot tall, maybe taller. It was huge.
Tell me, was someone with you at the time?
Yeah, my nephew.
What did he? What was his thoughts? What did he do? What was his reaction?
He thought, well, I'm glad you was with me, Unc. Nobody believed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he remained. I mean, he was probably just as surprised. And when something like that happens that fast, you don't have time to be afraid.
No.
Wow. So,
The next, we rode the boat across the pond, and just looking. We walked all around the property looking for tracks.
yes.
Rode the boat across the pond, and went down the back side of the embankment. As soon as we got down there, it started raining, and it was a freezing rain. The grass had ice around it, a half-inch thick,
Oh.
and I started laughing about the thought of the thing getting us, and I just slide back down the bank, and my nephew crawled up past me and said, "You're too slow. If you're gonna get in, I ain't."
Wow. So when you saw this, and I'm just curious about the weather, was there it was cold outside. Was there an ice storm approaching, or was it going to get frosty?
That storm that happened later that night,
It
or
did.
the next morning.
An ice storm.
It was cold.
Hmm.
See your breath.
I just asked that because sometimes these creatures tend to get a little more active around certain weather patterns,
Mm.
whether it's prior to a rain or a snowstorm or a windstorm or a hailstorm or an ice storm. It doesn't matter.
Now, the next morning, the ice storm hit.
See,
Mm.
it could be a coincidence, but there's a frequent pattern of them being seen more often. I'll just say that being seen more often by humans prior, during, or after, immediately after weather events.
Huh.
Mm.
So just kind of keep
But
that
just
in.
think what you look like a cow sitting out in the pasture, or bigger than a cow.
Really?
They like donkey ears or something like that at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, they're real long.
Wow.
That long snout.
Did it
It's a werewolf.
Wide at the base, though.
Yeah, yeah.
did it reveal its teeth to you besides you saw its tongue
Oh yeah, its teeth were showing, its tongue sticking out. Yeah,
and
But
you
he
saw
wasn't
but
aggressive.
no, it wasn't aggressive. I mean, he just had his mouth open
They just
because
breathing.
yeah, and he
wow.
looked right at us as he stepped across. But like no human could move that fast. Nothing natural could slow down that slow. It went across the front of the headlights so slow that they're impossibly slow.
That's interesting. That's
Slow motion looking at us.
that's because when something like that does that, in other words, there was literal intent to move slow. In other words, it wanted you to see it clearly.
Well, yeah.
Mhm.
It wanted you to see it. It wanted to show everything about it. It being that
Yeah.
close to your vehicle. How close did you say again?
Oh, 5 foot at the furthest front of the headlights.
Using your pickup truck then.
Yeah, I was
when
in a pickup
you had
truck.
a
The
1992 F-150.
yeah, the headlights were on bright.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm glad I wasn't on a side by side or a four wheeler.
yeah, he was standing 5 foot above the hood,
Jeez.
Yeah, you said
and I had a lift kit on my pickup
Really?
with the big 42-inch tires.
I think they were 44s back then. I think they were called 44s and had some TSL Super Swampers.
Oh, see, I've got 35s on my Power Wagon, so those
Yeah,
are big
truck that-
tires.
Anyway,
Yeah, it was up there.
Woo! Man, 5 feet above the hood? Jeez Louise.
oh, this thing was like I said, 9 to 10 foot tall.
Well, and that's not out of the
It's not
question.
yet.
I mean, folks that are listening right now, that's not out of the question. I mean, there was a gentleman, a young man I spoke with down in the panhandle of Texas, and he caught one off guard, him and a buddy, and they were down in this bottom area, just right in town almost. And it was kind of a wooded area that was no one goes into. And this one came out of the woods and it was on all fours and it was looking at him eye to eye, and he's about 5'9". So if you think about that, he said eye to eye, he was 5'9". He said the back was kind of humped, the wither was a little bit taller. So if you think about on being on all fours at 5'9", if you
Nice.
stand up, then now you've got a torso and leg length in there. So
Yeah.
it's not out of the question. Had that one that gentleman looked eye to eye with about 15 feet, that one would probably have reached about 9 feet.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah. My goodness.
And this has got some power. It jumped literally from the left side of the highway across the bar ditch, across the another 5-string barbed wire fence into the pasture. And as soon as it landed, it turned around and set it down on its haunches.
Wow. Wow.
It just looked as if it's a full moon.
So it wasn't in a big hurry to leave, for sure. It
Oh,
wanted to
no,
kind of watch
no,
you.
it wanted to see it because uh, it was like he knew it was us. I don't know how, but he's like he knew it was us.
Yeah, the only thing I thought about though, grandmommy, that's my grandma. I call her grandmommy, but she was half Osage, and I don't know if that ever had anything to do with anything or not.
Well, that's a great, great question because had you asked me this, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I'd probably say, I don't know. But now,
Halfway up the property line, there is an Indian burial ground, Indian, Indian cemetery.
oh,
How
and
big it is, I don't know because it's no longer there. But I had a
well,
friend over and he had a map that showed every Indian burial ground and all kinds of stuff. And it showed right halfway on our property line
Well,
to the
dang.
left of the driveway, halfway up was the Indian burial ground.
well, that's an interesting point too that you bring up because where I was out where I live, not immediately where I live right now, but away from here as a crow flies, maybe about 5 miles or seven, maybe 5 miles. Um, we were doing some investigation and we didn't know there was an Indian burial ground down there, and so there's a lot of sightings down there. So could it be coincidence? It's possible, but I think in a lot of these burial grounds there was a lot of ceremony, a lot of prayers, a lot of interesting, let's just call it interesting energy. So I don't know if it's an attractant or I don't know. I haven't figured out that link yet,
I don't need it. I
but
don't need it.
it's very interesting you say that there was Native American burial grounds down there where the sighting close by. So getting back to your grandmother, being Osage, uh, that's interesting because I think people and again the only thing I can say is that maybe that there is um I know this is going to sound kind of kooky, but I think certain people have a certain awareness and energy about them that could be an attractant, or they just kind of know.
Yeah, I didn't. I never felt no fear from it. I mean, any other time if I saw something like that, I think it just scared the witch of me. But it did not scare me. Why? I don't know. Not that I'm that brave or nothing. It just didn't scare me.
Well, I think
I went out at night and went down the driveway many times after that. And I remembered it, but I never was afraid.
that's rare. That's great, but that's rare because most people they see something like that, there's like no way, there's no way you're going to push them out with a 2x4 out of that door. They're going to only wait till the sun rises, and when the sun sets, they're coming in.
Yeah, I'm 74 years old.
Well, not many people have that grit, but that's good in many ways that you didn't have any trauma from that because a lot of the people that I talk to that see these creatures, they have some trauma, emotional trauma that stays with them a number of years, and they move. They don't hunt anymore. They sell all their hunting equipment, and even living in the cities, they don't get out at night and walk around the neighborhood just because not that they worry that something's going to pop out, but it's just that dark, not knowing and shadows.
After that at night,
Sorry.
Of course, I had my bulldog with me, helped a lot, but
No,
Sure.
he'll walk down the driveway at night, but he had his bulldog with him. He usually always had some sort of a pit bull he was raising out there.
Well, like I say, dogs are good alarms. It's even if they kind of cower, the personality of the dog, and when they start acting weird or funny or really bizarre, you'll know what normal is and what abnormal is in your dog's characteristics.
Yes.
So, well, man, that's pretty hair raising when you see that right in front of you. And then we'll move on, Sean, here. But
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you some of the other features. You said it was kind of silver. Tell me about the upper body or the hands or anything else that you saw, if you don't mind.
I really don't remember the hands, but the upper body was huge. I mean, it girth looked like to me like 3 foot thick. If it was sideways, which it did turn sideways, when it looked at us. His old tongue was hanging about 8 inches out of his mouth. Saliva dripping off of it. In a full moon, you could see the tips of its hair was like gristle. I mean, sparkly. To me,
Mane or something.
yeah, like down the back of its back, the hairs was like silver.
Like silver tipped, or they was just all silver that you could tell?
Like more silver tipped in the moonlight, but it was all silver.
Wow.
Silver or grayish white.
So was it muscular in its upper body?
Yes, very.
Did it when it looked at you and you could see the mouth, the tongue, and the eyes? Did it give any kind of a gesture, any grin? I know this sounds odd, but did it give a grin or a snicker or a look in its eyes at you?
No, just look.
You had a tiger do that one time.
Yeah. I had a tiger when I was in Vietnam. I was doing a listening post up to my nose in a hole. I felt this warm brush of air go clear around me. And you couldn't just physically turn around. You had to jump and spin. When I jumped and spinned around, my nose touched something warm and moist. When I leaned back, it's a full moon. Over there on 3/4 of the moon, you can read a newspaper.
Wow.
It's like a full moon. Anyway, I leaned back to see what it was. It was a tiger. And its head's about 8 times bigger than mine. It could have reached down and bit me like head and all down in my chest.
Oh
It
my
wanted to.
gosh.
You're down in the foxhole.
Yeah, in a hole, a listening post
down
hole.
there, you know.
Yeah, my only thing sticking out of the ground was my head. And it licked its teeth from one side to the other side. Like, you're going to taste so good.
Oh my gosh.
And then it winked at me and smiled, grinned and smiled. I didn't know a tiger could grin, but it can. And winked at me with a big old eye, closed eyes, winked at me, turned around and left as quietly as it came.
Jeez.
It could have reached out and bit me around the shoulders and took it off.
Wow. That right there would be enough trauma to do anyone in right there. So you've had some experience with...
I got you.
What's that?
The tiger was like, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to let you...
Teeth, or open that mouth up and rip that big old tongue across them teeth. Round. You're going to taste good. He smiled and turned around and winked and smiled, turned around and left as quietly as it came.
Wow. Wow. How old were you at that time?
20.
Amazing.
Because I just been in the service about a year and they got deployed to Vietnam.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service. I know that was what division? What were you in?
I was in the Air Force, but I worked security police, so we was on the flat line, guarding the perimeter of the base.
Wow. That was amazing times, and blessings to you, sir, for being over there that young. My goodness. And that was...
I just turned 74 this September.
Well, God bless you. I mean, that was at a time when men were men. They just had grit and determination. There's just... That was... I wish...
I was, as far as I know, maybe the only person that ran a Xeon Searchlight. Life expectancy had the big red block letters that said life expectancy 30 seconds. They wanted a single man with no family, no kids. They took me because I was the only one that volunteered, even though I wasn't married and had a kid.
Right. Wow.
That light was shining 10 miles. That's a classified infrared of 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, it'd be easy to spot and shoot at a light.
Oh, every goof one put the light out.
Yeah, they were looking for you.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Well, I'm glad.
The reason I'm still here, because I could hear shrapnel whizzing past me on both sides, and when I get done running the light, I raise my shirt up to see how bad I was hit, and nothing, not a scratch.
Wow.
Yeah. Good Lord, right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you came back, and
Me too, sir.
I'm glad you came back, and you.
Yeah, I only had that one experience with it when I was going to Idabel to get a bottle of liquor for me and my nephew. And I really wanted to go. I wasn't that crazy about trying to start with, but I really wanted that bottle after seeing him.
Oh, no kidding. I was going to say that's enough to make you drink right there.
Calm the nerves down. Huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
I never seen it again. Now, a couple nights later, I did see some big amber eyes in the bushes, and it crashed off.
Really? Was this just outside your house?
Yeah, just right through the gate, 100 feet from the house.
Right where the satellite was, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Side dish.
Well, that's possible. It
right,
could.
right past the woodpile.
Yeah.
That is what I'm speaking of.
Well, we usually say this, and it's not that we can absolutely prove what I'm getting ready to say, but usually it's more than not when people see these creatures, there's usually more than one around. There's usually more than one. Now, I don't know how many there might be around, but in past interviews, usually when there's one, there's another one hanging around somewhere. And they usually, not that they can't take care of business by themselves, but they usually are very good about tandem hunting, pack hunting. They don't need a slew of them, but they're very good about attacking their prey at
Yeah.
Taking the attention of one, and the other come in to the side about flanking. So keep that in your noodle.
Cloak themselves in invisibility.
Well, that's an area that we're still kind of debating. How can they do it? It's kind of like Bigfoot. We've come to the conclusion that I'm not saying anything is not possible. It's very possible, but I'm saying that because of the hair follicles, they could have humans have solid shaft hair of keratin. Bigfoot, we've come to understand that they have more of a hollow or shaft of hair, even though they have colors. They being hollow shaft, it's like an optic fiber. So anything that's in the foreground or background, they will blend into it, and the reflectivity of their skin, so they become whatever they're against. So you could call that achromatic, or they just kind of blend into the surroundings. So it's like they disappear. They don't disappear, but they disappear.
I think the werewolf has the same quality.
That makes sense to me right there.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And that's kind of how I understand it. So it's very, very likely they may have some of the same characteristics. And so that's kind of how I see it. So they could blend into the shadows. They can have a tree in front of them or behind them, and all of a sudden they become the tree, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whether it's green cedar or this time of the oaks are changing and all that. So, and here's another thing. It is my opinion that the Bigfoot, during certain seasons or times of the year, their hair color will change according to the season. So I'm not saying it's going to go completely from red to black, but I'm saying that there is some thought or some reasoning that, say, if there's a Bigfoot that's black, some of the hairs may go into a light blonde stage during the fall, so they can just blend right into the leaf foliage. And so if something's red, it may go a little bit more of a red yellow or something of that nature. Just based on a lot of interviews.
And I was looking for a colored book. It's called Mythological Creatures.
Mm.
Now, there's a werewolf in that colored book. Somebody must have seen it and then drew the colored book.
It's possible.
We couldn't find the colored book. There's Charles' wife pulled up a bunch of pictures of the werewolf, like drawings, and I didn't see none of them that looked like it. But there's that one in that colored book from Walmart, and she's going to order a couple of them. That somebody must have seen it and then drawn it.
I'll send you when we get done today, if I can send it to this number.
Absolutely.
And then
Yes.
I've got a buddy that had a close up. Dave's encounter that's with us, he said when I first interviewed him before we became good friends, he said that it was like off the Van Helsing movie.
Yeah, yeah,
He said it looked like
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
And that's what his description. He said mine was black. You put black on that, you make the eyes yellow, and that's exactly what I saw. He said the snout was kind of long, and
Yeah.
it's the first time he's ever been frightened in 35 years of predator hunting at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another guy that saw one off the Creek Turnpike up in Tulsa. And matter of fact, it was only 2 miles from where I lived at that time. And he said his didn't look so much like that. And he sent me a picture. And if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, it looked just like the creature on the movie. Yeah,
Oh, it did. Okay.
yeah,
Well, there you go.
exactly like.
Wow. Man.
Oh, this thing was huge. Like I said, after it jumped, cleared the Blacktop Highway, cleared the bar ditch, and landed in the pasture. Turned around and sat down on its haunches. It was like a cow sitting out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that size.
So sitting on its haunches, it was more than likely it was over 6 foot tall, at least sitting on its haunches.
Oh, yeah, at least.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy that saw one outside of Cleveland, Oklahoma, which is where I live is between Cleveland and Manford. And he said he saw one sitting in the ditch on his way home, and he thought it was a cedar tree because it was how it was sitting was kind of big at the base, and then the cedar tree kind of gradually goes up into a pyramid, right? It just
Right.
slopes up, and he took a glance. There was a deer in the ditch, and the deer didn't really budge, and he's looking, and then he took it back, and as soon as he passed it, he was moving his head forward so he didn't go off the road, and as he moved his head forward to the left, he looked again, and he's like, there's a cedar tree in the ditch. That's odd. And he looked again, and it was one of these Dogman creatures upright sitting down on its haunches, looked right at him.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And he said it was black with silver tips, and its ears stuck straight up, so it made the tip of what he thought was a cedar tree.
This one did too.
Wow.
He just sat there and stared. It was like a statue.
Mm.
So
Full moon when I seen it, and his hair was like glowing in the moonlight.
Mm.
You see him real well.
wow. Did your family
And
member
with
that?
bright headlights in my truck, I could really see him. He's only like 5 feet in front of the hood at the furthest.
Wow. Did your family member that was with you? Did they ever have any problems sleeping after that, or did you guys talk about it a little bit after that, or still talk about it?
He wouldn't go out in the woods for a
He
while.
wouldn't go out in the woods for a while, and I did a Sasquatch walk across the porch because he was sitting in my dad's easy chair right there in front of the big picture window. And in 1 second, he had bounced into the bedroom with my mom screaming. I shouldn't have frightened a little guy like that.
Oh wow! So this was, on a different occasion, he saw a Sasquatch.
No, I just acted like Sasquatch going across the front.
Oh, you acted like okay.
Nephew.
He was playing games with him. The way that they have a big window there in the living room, and where that light sits.
Yes.
And natural sunlight. If you come through there at the certain part of the day, it casts a shadow in that living room. And he was messing with him because where the TV sits, you sit there with your back up against that window, and so the shadow goes across the wall. And he comes through there arching his back, walking kind of like a Sasquatch.
Oh my.
Out, his nephew there, my cousin, and
So I guess seeing the werewolf did bother him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
It just kind of excited me and got my curiosity up. Like, wow,
yeah,
they do exist.
Yeah, I was going to say it. So do you guys still talk about that encounter sometime?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's why, when people say, well, I want to have an experience with these creatures, or I want an experience, and I'm like, you don't know, you don't really know what you're asking.
No, you don't want to have that. Thank God it hasn't bothered me, but other people that have the whatever probably really get to them.
Well, whatever that was I saw, I had like kind of that creepy feeling, kind of freaking out. But what's interesting though, I've had several encounters, I guess, altogether now, but like that one that was back in Texas, I seen two then, and it was in the daylight because it was right before the sun went down, and I got within, probably 20, 25 foot, and but I didn't have a creepy feeling then, which was interesting. I found that very interesting.
Well, go into that if you don't mind, and then if I have some more questions, I'll get back to. Is your uncle or your grandfather?
This is my uncle.
Uncle. I'll get back to him. But if you want to get into your story, that one in those two in Texas.
Okay, sure. Let's see. This would have been. Let's see. Skipping through a couple here. Back to Texas. Where we at? Here we are. Okay, this would have been. Yeah. Okay. Around the year 2010. Same thing. This was also around Thanksgiving, and I don't know why. It seems like it seems to happen somewhere around the Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday time, but it seems like that's when I have them. So this would have been probably about 2 days before Thanksgiving in 2010. And do you want me to give the name? I mean, I don't live there no more, so it don't matter to me.
Sure.
Do you want me to share? I mean, I want to do however you want me to do this.
No, it's whatever you're comfortable with. If
Okay.
Usually if it's public property, it's not a problem. But if it's on private property, I just kind of because it's up to you.
Yeah, I just don't own it. I mean, I didn't know if you want me to give the town away or just say Texas.
Yeah, you can tell the town if you want.
Okay. This was in Tatum, Texas.
Okay.
And Tatum, geographically, is kind of in between Longview and Carthage, Texas. It's kind of in the middle, and then like 30 miles east would be Marshall, Texas. Everybody talks about the Christmas lights and all that stuff. So in Tatum, 2010, about 2 days before Thanksgiving, we had an old like porch swing out there outside. And like I said, I spend a lot of time outside, especially when the weather's nice like that.
Oh yeah.
I can't stand this heat, this 100-degree and all that kind of stuff. But I love the fall and the winter time. And so I spend a lot of time out there. A lot of times, even the holidays, when the family gets together and eat, I'll just go outside, just walk around, piddle around, where a lot of people stay in there and talk and gossip,
Yeah, I'm with you. I love the outdoors when it's cool.
Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, I was sitting out there on that porch swing and just kind of sitting out there. I wasn't listening to music or nothing. I was just enjoying being outside, and listening to the birds and stuff and watching the squirrels run around and pick up nuts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, as I was sitting there, I thought, man, look at these deer, coming up. They was probably sitting in the woods, I'm going to say probably about 30 foot in, 35 foot, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
No more than 40 foot inside the thickets of the woods. And it's pretty dense where it was, so you can kind of make out, there's an animal in there, but you can't just see just real good. But in my opinion, I thought I was looking at 2 deer,
Okay.
And I thought, wow, look at these deer, and they'd walk around on all fours. I could make that much out. And then, if you've ever seen a deer, sometimes they will stand up on 2 feet so they can reach like a berry or something,
Like persimmons.
Yes, exactly. And so I thought that's what I was watching was 2 deer trying to stand up on his haunches to reach stuff, and get a little nibble here and there, because it would do it fairly often. Both of them would. And I thought, man, look at these deer. And then I got to looking at it, I thought, man, they are huge. And where I was at, it's kind of close to where the mines were. And so I thought, well, these are those protected deer that never get hunted because they're protected out there in the mines, so they can grow big. And there's a lake out there, plenty of food and water for them.
Right.
And never being hunted. So I thought, well, that's what these are, that's why they're so big. And so I was just sitting there enjoying myself watching them. That's all that was in my mind was, wow, look at these deer. And I'm just going to sit quietly here and get still. So I quit kind of swinging and just got still watching them, just enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you I sat there for probably 15 minutes watching them do this, walking around through there. They'd go over here and they'd go over here and get these berries over here. And see, I had, what do you call that tree? Mulberry trees and stuff like that out there.
Yeah.
And so, man, they were just kind of picking them clean, and I thought, man, this is really neat. And I thought, man, I wished I had my cell phone out here. I'd get a picture of it, And so, but I was too scared to move, so I knew if I got up, they'd run off,
Mm-hmm.
at least so I'm thinking. And so I sat there, like I said, a good 15 minutes. And then they kind of meander around, and we had just 5 acres there that butted up to like another, couple hundred back there that was solid woods. And so I sat there and watched them, and they meandered over to the end of my 5 acres. And the way the land property set, which right here we're on a hill also, but over there it was also on a hill. And you could see where it kind of tapers down as it goes off towards the neighbor's side, their property.
Okay.
And so what I'm trying to say is when you're sitting in that swing and the property, the contour of the land starts to go down the hill, and you can still see the top of their heads, I'm thinking, man, these are some tall deer,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, yeah, and so I'm sitting there watching this thing, and at this point, as I get down to that barbed wire fence where my property splits off to the neighbors, I'm gonna say that's roughly maybe 75 to 80 yards away from where I was sitting in that swing. And so I got up. I said, well, I'm gonna see if I can get a closer look and just see, how big these deer really are, because I mean they got to be monsters. If I could still see the tops of their heads from sitting in this swing as they go down that hill.
Yeah.
And so I ease up out of that swing and just start walking. And I'm trying to look where I'm walking to make sure I'm not going to crunch any leaves. And then I'm checking the wind, which way is the wind. And I thought, oh crap, the wind is blowing from me to them. I thought, man, I don't know if this is going to work or not. But I thought, well, I'm up. I'm going to try it anyway. And so I just ease on up there. And at the time, I had like my Carhartts on because it was cool out. And I was wearing my Wolverines.
Oh yeah.
My work boots.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still had them on. And so, I'm not really just being super quiet here, but I'm trying to be. And, the Carhartts, a lot of times, they're kind of, how do you explain it? Yeah, real stiff, like you can weld in them. You know what I'm saying? Real
Oh yeah.
starchy.
Yep. Exactly.
So I'm trying not to, make them whisk by each other between the legs, as I'm walking,
Yeah, that heavy canvas.
Yes, that canvas stuff. And so I'm trying to be quiet, and so I'm moving real slow, and I end up getting approximately somewhere between 20 to 25 foot, I'm estimating, before I got to them. And as I got to them, I'm sitting there looking at these things. I'm like, oh my God, am I really seeing this? I'm like, these aren't deer. They were looking, they had their backs to me, okay, both of them. And there was two of them, and they were gray and white in color, and they were approximately 7 foot tall. And this is when they're kind of standing up and slightly hunched over, and they had was looking out across towards the neighbor's side as I had snuck up on them. And I don't know how I did that. I mean, I really, honest to God, it had to have been God, I guess, wanting me to see these things. Maybe, I don't know, but I'm looking at them, and I go to kind of slapping and pinching my face kind of quietly. I still don't want them to notice me yet. And I'm like, am I really seeing this? Am I dreaming this?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I wasn't drinking or anything like that. We were going to church pretty hot and heavy and stuff, even doing Wednesday night services,
Yep.
I was really, I don't know what you say, crossing my T's, dot my I's, so to speak, but you know what I mean?
Sure. Absolutely.
By grace, no matter how good you try to act, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm praying again. I'm like, God, what are these things? And it's like the only way I could describe it was like a werewolf or Dogman,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at them, and the one on the left, all of a sudden, I saw the ears kind of twitching, moving. They can kind of move their ears a little bit in the direction where maybe they think they hear something.
Yeah.
And the nose, they stuck the one on the left stuck his nose straight up in there and went to sniffing, And then as he did, he kind of turned over to the left and then kind of turned back to the right. He's trying to find out. I know he's getting my scent,
Right.
And so the thing turns all the way around to the left, and then boom, he looks at me. And then the one that's standing to the right of it, like all of a sudden looks at him or her. I don't know if it's male or female, but looks at him. And it's like there wasn't a sound made between the two, but it's almost as if they had telepathy or something. It was weird to watch, but the one looked at this one like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
And so it's like, so it turns and looks at me. It's like, oh, you're looking at him, you know? And they both kind of had this startled look, like, can he really see us, you know? And I'm looking at them. Are you really real, you
Yeah.
know? And my curiosity at that time had overridden my fear, so I took three more steps forward, and I don't know why. I know it's stupid, but at the time, my mind wasn't working right because I'm in shock, but I'm also in awe of what I'm looking at, you know. And I should have probably been really scared then, but now I'm just in awe that, man, these things really do exist, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I take three more steps forward. Well, then all of a sudden, they they drop their heads down about 3 foot or so, and the ears folded straight back as if to say, "Okay, fella, that's close enough," you know.
And how close were you at that time? 3 steps forward.
3 steps forward. I'm gonna say I was probably somewhere in the area of around somewhere probably between 15, 18 foot or something like that.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh.
I could see the whites in their eye. I know they had brown eyes. I can tell you that. I saw that much.
That's close.
Yes, it was close, but you know, and like my uncle said that last time, that first time I was scared, real scared, and then creeped out, you know. But
Sure.
this time was different, and I don't know what the difference is, except the only thing I can tell you is before all this happened, back when I was in my younger 20s working at a construction job there in Carthage, I had made a friend with one of the lead carpenters up there, and at the time I was like a helper, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the second or third construction job I had. And anyway, we got to talking about things, and was friends with like he said like an elder, I think is what he called him. But it's basically an old Indian man, and then he had, I guess, you know, some younger people under. I don't know if it's family members or what, but I want to say he said they were Cherokee, or you know, I think he said Cherokee. And we got to talking about things. He was talking about werewolves and stuff and being able to change and stuff. Not him in particular, but this old man could. He said that the other guys that were younger than him that were in that, I don't know if you want to call them tribe or what, but, you know, they'd meet up like once a month, I guess, somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they couldn't change unless it was like certain things going on. I don't know if it was with the moon or a certain time of the month of the year. I don't know what the recipe was for them. But he said the old man could change at will when he wanted to. And I said, "Are you serious?" I thought he was messing with me. And I kind of laughed, and I saw the look on his face. It's like it hurt his feelings, and at the same time kind of ticked him off too, you know.
Yeah.
I said, "Man, I didn't mean to offend you. Nothing. Are you being serious with me?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I really am." He said, he said, "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you the truth." And kind of like my uncle said, you don't really say this stuff to just anybody. And I guess he really felt like a confidant, you know, with me.
Sure.
And so I was kind of took back with that. I said, "Well, man," and I apologized to him. I said, "Look, man, I'm sorry." I said, "I didn't mean to make fun or laugh." I said, "I just had never seen anything like that yet, you know."
Yeah. Or even heard of
So,
that.
yes. And so he was like, "Well," he's like, "would you like to come see for yourself?" And then it kind of scared me. I was like, "Well, I don't know if I do or not." He said, "Well, first," he said, "I can't just do that." He said, "I got to talk to the elder first and then go from there." So, you know, a week or so goes by, and I see him again out there working. He says, "Well, I talked to the elder, and he said that if you wanted to come, as long as you came by yourself, you could come and you could watch, you know, when we meet up again.
Yeah.
And you could watch, you know, one or two of them change out there." And I was like, "Man, are you serious?" And so he's like, "Yes." He said, "I'm very, very serious." And he said, the elder said that he felt like, I don't know what he meant when he said he felt, but he said he felt like you had like a pure spirit, which I know in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you only knew the things I did in my life, you know. And anyway, but he just said that to me, and I thought, well, okay. So I just kind of went along with it. And he's like, the elder said, if you want to come and watch, you can. Okay. He said, we're going to meet at such time next month. And if you want, I'll meet you somewhere. You can follow me out there, you know. And I guess they had a little shack out in the woods somewhere on one of them's property somewhere. Elder. And so anyway, I'm like, well, you know, I'll think about it. And I said, I'm kind of nervous about it now that I see you're serious and everything. I said, man, you got me really, really kind of freaked out a little bit, but I believe you. And so I'm going to say about a month or so goes by, because, you know, we're all moving around as we're working, building this. I see him again about a month later, and he's like, "Hey man, did you think about it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I just don't know about going through seeing that." I said, "I believe you, man." I said, "Now," I said, "I even getting goosebumps when just talking about it, you know." And he's like, "Yeah." He said, "I kind of get that." He said, "I was scared too at first, but now that I know that, you know, it's okay and they're not going to hurt me, you know." He said, "I have much respect though, you know." And I said, "I'd imagine."
Hmm.
So he said, "But the elder wanted to know if you'd like to at least see one sometime. Like, if you don't want to come out there now, if you'd like to see one in life." And so if he comes back and says, "Hey, he said that, you know, you will see one." He said, "Maybe two." I said, "Really?" He said, "But he didn't know when, but sometime in your lifetime it will happen." And so I kind of, so, you know, I had
Interesting.
forgotten about all this. Years have went by since then.
Okay.
Years have went by, and so up to the point, even when I saw the first one in Oklahoma, where I was actually freaked out, it's not registered. I'm not even thinking about that yet. But after this one that I'm talking about here, which I've had, let's see, next night, at least two more, I think, in between the one and Tatum here that I'm talking about that actually come after that one. So, uh, and Tatum, it actually registered after, like a month or so after Thanksgiving, like sometime maybe right after Christmas.
Okay.
It registered, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember talking to that guy, and that was back in 1994. And like I said, we were working in Carthage, and we were building that, and like I said, he was a carpenter, and I was like a carpenter's helper at the time, because I was just, you know, kind of learning my way around and all that kind of stuff, how to do these forms for concrete and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so when he told me I will see one, maybe two later in life, I was like, okay, that's cool, but I don't know when. So I'm like, well, maybe I won't, you know. And like I said, this from 1994, it went to 1997 when I had that first encounter there in Oklahoma. And then now we're already up. And like I said, I had another episode after that next night. Well, actually, I was in the shower, and I guess this thing was irritated at me because I rebuked it in Jesus' name, and he hit the side of the house so hard that he knocked all the shampoo bottles and the soap and everything fell in the tub. And it was such a hard hit that everybody came running from the other side of the house thinking I had passed out and hit my head in that old metal tub.
Oh my gosh.
And I was actually kind of upset with, you know, like I said, we'd always play jokes with each other. I'd put itch and dust in his underwear and all kinds of, you know, fun. It was funny to me, not to him.
Yeah,
Know?
sure. Exactly.
You know, we would play jokes on each other all the time, you know, me and my other cousin there. But I said, you need to quit playing, man. You know, like that. And he said, think about it, Sean. He said, could my old fat butt run around the side of the house, hit the side of the house, and come back in here, then stand here, look at you, and not be out of breath? And so I got to thinking about it. I said, you know, you're right. No, you couldn't. And then all of a sudden, I got to thinking, well, that's that doggone Dogman, you know, or Bigfoot, you know, like
Right.
we said,
Right.
you know.
Wow,
And
that's
so
a hard hit.
it was a hard hit. It was hard enough that it knocked a piece of the siding off that old house too when it hit. But all the shampoo bottles and everything fell in there, and remembers that day as well. Mom was there, my aunt was they all come running in there thinking that, you know, something bad had done happened.
So, what did you? I mean, you had this thought of, you know, if it wasn't the family member that did that, did you ever share that with the rest of the family, or did you just kind of keep it to yourself?
Well, at the time, I think I just kind of kept it to myself then until to make sure what I thought I saw really happened, so that
Right.
I didn't look crazy or sound crazy, you know.
Exactly. Right.
And so I kind of just kind of kept it like that at the time, but you know, and so, and like I said, that was actually the next night, like the whole next day in the nighttime, I was getting a shower, and then that happened, and then I thought, man, that was that sucker coming back, irritated at me.
Probably.
And I mean,
Probably.
he could have knocked that window out. He could have come on in there if he wanted to, but he was just letting me know, you know, I've been watching you, you know.
Well,
And it was weird how he knew that I was in there. You
well,
know,
here, that's it. That's what I was going to say. It's interesting because this has happened more than one occasion, many occasions actually, with a lot of these guests that had encounters, is that they'll ask me, how did it know where I was at in the house?
inside that house. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to we believe that their olfactory or their sense of smell. Just think if you have if you're that big, just think of the nasal cavity, how large it is, and how you can smell the minutia of the smallest of things, right?
Yeah.
The parts per million. So either that or just and again this is kind of out there, but just the have you ever seen the dog trainer Caesar Milan?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
Yes.
so he's got a big ranch in California somewhere, and he trains dog trainers, and he trains people how to handle their dog, especially big dogs. Uh,
Yes.
so he always says that you have to act like a bigger dog when you have big dogs that you want to behave and listen to your command. He said it's all about the energy you subject outward,
Yeah.
right? You can't be kind of cowardly about things or kind of hesitant or you've got to speak with authority. and
Yes.
and they see you in the eyes. They'll look at my dog. He's 120 pounds and he's always looking me in the eyes like, what do you want me to do? And so you kind of have to be the alpha when you have a big dog. And
Right.
I say all that because I think people emit or subject this type of energy about them. And I think it can pick that up, whether you're terrified, not, unsure, worried, or whatever. So I think that in combination with the smell and who knows what else, I think that's how they know. Could they hear your heartbeat? No one's ever talked about that. Could they detect the kind of heartbeat you have? I mean, it
Hmm.
sounds kind of silly, but it's probable. It's
Yes.
probable. So that may be also how they detect where you're at in the house, because that's happened more than once where people say, how do they know that I was in the bedroom and it didn't, they didn't,
Yeah.
I've got 5 other people in the house and yet it was happened to me in tapping on the window where I was at,
Mm-hmm.
and that's come across, I mean, that's a question that's come across more than once with several guest eyewitnesses
Mm.
or people that experienced things like that happen. And it could be a combination of all that I said. Maybe there's some other things that I'm not aware of, but that's very interesting, especially in the shower.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, he hit the side of that house, and I don't know if you've ever, had lightning, strike like right next to the house or at the house, but it sounded like the noise made. And this is a big old house. Like there's the kitchen. This is the whole other side of the house. And they all immediately come running back there. They just knew something terrible happened to me because, like I said, they still had the old metal style bathtub, but it had a shower head up top. And when this thing hit the side of the house, every like they had two different kinds of shampoo and two different kinds of conditioner, and then like there's a bar of lava soap. Back then they had lava soap, and then they had a bar of like Dial or something in there.
Yeah.
Everything, razors and everything, hit inside the tub like all at once. It was such a violent boom.
And
And
is that restroom on the corner of the house or just on the side of the house?
yeah, it's in the middle actually, but it's on the other side. But it was in the middle. Yeah, there's a bedroom on both sides of that, and it's
Wow.
directly in the middle.
That's incredible. And it's not, is it a trailer or is it a
No, it's a sure enough house.
It's an
Yeah.
old house. It was moved in. Uh, it's made of real lumber, real two by fours and uh, real lumber.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
solid house. I mean, got a fireplace, all that stuff, river rock fireplace.
Oh wow. That's kind of how my house. I've got real, you know, cut 2x4s, 2x6s.
Yeah.
Yeah, two by four and real two by six, real two by four.
And like their carport and everything was like solid concrete. They had concrete poured out there, man. It was nice the way they had it set up.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. And who knows? It could be that same one that came through, and we don't know. I mean, could it have been a Bigfoot? It's possible. Did you find any handprints, claw prints, or anything like that on the house
No, just that broken piece of
siding?
that it chipped off, that little piece. And I do remember we were trying to measure it, and it's like that part, like what kind of broke off there, if I remember correctly, we took an old garden rake, like not the kind that's real flexible, like the one you use actually in a garden.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? And what's the span on that? Maybe about, what is that, about 10, 12 inches or so?
Mm-hmm.
1.5 anyway.
But I mean, it was wide, and we stuck it up there, and it was maybe a hair, maybe an inch or two, below that, as far as the width.
Wow.
So and that could have, now I'm not saying that was the whole hand, or it could have been part of the arm up there, because the way it hit, it sounded as if this thing could make a fist and then just hammer fist the side of the house, is what it sounded like, to me. Yeah, it sounded like a dang sledgehammer hit it. It was a violent hit.
Man.